How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to TheBlueShifting. Thanks for letting me have my break. I had a really good time. Part of the convention was just, it was basically a bunch of writers and stuff. So one of my favorite authors, Brandon Sanderson, was there, but he also had other authors that he had panels with and that did signings and stuff. It was really good. Like, there's also just a good collection for people who are like, getting into, who are creative writing or creatives in general. I just had a lot of fun. There's a really cool puzzle book and stuff. I think I'll probably showcase maybe some of it in the future video, just because the event was really fun. But for now, I just want to get back into stuff. Hopefully this is coming at a good time and we're getting really excited. I think we're gearing up for Christmas and stuff. So if you celebrate that, awesome. But even if you don't, a lot of times, there's a lot of places in the world where it still is just like a time where we take a step back, prepare for the end of the year, all that good stuff. So hopefully you're having a good time and having some celebrations, getting together with family and friends or whatever, for whatever reasons that could be driving you for it. Like, hopefully you're getting to do some fun stuff. So, thank you. And thanks for spending some of your time here with me. So, we just ended the first chapter. It was a long chapter. We broke it up. So we're going to see if the other chapters are going to be that long. We'll obviously break them up as well, but I'm getting the feeling it'll probably be a bit more like regular structured now. So we'll see. But I'll get a feel for it. I'll just stop when I feel like it's a good time to stop. But now that we're seeing our investigator kind of go to the valley during the time of the protest for the dam, we're going to see some of the things he's going to see. And obviously, there's nothing he does here that's going to ultimately stop what's been going on, but hopefully we'll get some better understanding of things as they are and what's really happening. There's also some implications of like internal strife. For instance, it looks like there was a kidnapping of the chancellor of construction or development in Tokyo, and that they're using that kidnapping to kind of put pressure on him. But it also implied that there was an older gentleman who was kind of unhappy with the fact that they had a child that they kidnapped. And I wonder, because I was commenting how odd it is that they made a specific mention that the Furudes were fully supportive of what was going on, when we know for a fact that they were considered an enemy by the end of this, and that's why they were eliminated by the curse. So I'm guessing the old man that we saw might have been Rika's grandfather, maybe the shrine, or her dad, the shrine, whoever runs the shrine, and that maybe the kidnapping of the child was what finally turned him from saying, hey, maybe we're not doing the right thing, and he becomes an informant for the police, which Oishi talks about, he referenced. So that's kind of my running theory, and that's why Rika's parents got eliminated, was because in their eyes he turned traitor on them, which would be really interesting. So yeah, other than that, let's jump in and continue. Waking up at the cheap hotel in the city was by no means pleasant. I remembered even during the long camping trips we had during grade school, I wanted to get home quickly, counting out the days left on my fingers. Waking up this morning, I was somehow reminded of that. Was it a need to be with my wife when she gave birth? I would guess so. I'd hope so. A particular type of homesickness? As a productive member of society, as a public servant bound to fulfill his duties, it was pathetic indeed. That's a sad way to look at it. He wants to be with his freaking family. Like, I think it's going to imply that, like, there's like this oppressive sense of just like being an outsider and that you need to get out. But I think it's also like, being home for your children, probably a good thing. I don't see why you're beating yourself up about having like that be a main drive of your life. Those negative emotions faded as I dropped down my breakfast, which was surprisingly not half bad. The meeting with the informant that Oishi had provided would be tonight. Until then, I couldn't just be lazing around. The Onogafuchi Guardians was protesting the dam's construction in various ways. Including in this was a strategy for improving public relations, which could be categorized in two major forms, combative and peaceful. Combative improving of public relations. Yeah, you will be friendly. In regards to the former, as an attempt to keep law enforcement in check, they appealed to the public's sympathy by highlighting the oppressive and inhumane tactics of the police and the brutality of the riot squads. The latter, peaceful route, stressed how precious the natural surroundings of Hinamizawa was, seeking people who would oppose the dam on an environmental ground. As part of that, the village of Hinamizawa had invited celebrated zoologists and botanists, as well as the environmental groups, to advertise the nature surrounding the town. According to the news, in recent years, there had been a group calling itself Hinamizawa Nature Watching, setting up free sightseeing tours. I would have liked to have taken advantage of the opportunity, but when I called the village administrative offices, they said it was too late to apply for the tour, that they were still undecided as to whether they'd be doing another one. So maybe that strategy was deemed as just not good.
次回の募集はありませんか。残念です。
あんた、環境保護団体さんですか？それとも雑誌さんの人？
いえ、個人です。
個人？観光ですかね？
観光みたいなものです。美しい自然を写真に残すのが趣味なんで。
Oh, interesting. It's that's funny because this is the exact same strategy that Tobutaka-san would have. Whether he was using it as an excuse or he just was a photographer, I think the answer is actually kind of both.
雑誌でとても貴重な自然が残っていると読んだので、楽しみにしていたのですが。
I knew there was an article that had something like that written in it, but I hadn't actually read it. Was it this ad-libbing lie not going to work? However, contrary to my expectations, the person I was speaking to laughed happily.
ならあんた、村はちょいと慌ただしいけど、歓迎しますよ。
That's surprisingly positive. Almost kind of creepy, actually.
ぜひそうさせていただきます。ありがとうございます。
あんた、明日は何ですか？お車？もしそうだったら、先にナンバーを聞いておきますよ。
Oh yeah, that's creepy again.
タイはないんですがね。
God, this guy's creepy. That was probably related to the checkpoints they set up on the way to the village. If I didn't give them my license plate number, I'd most likely be hindered in various ways. I thought about using the car I'd borrowed from the prefecture, but I was lost on whether that was okay to tell them that plate number. If the Onogafuchi Guardians were behind this incident, there was no guarantee that they wouldn't be able to find out who I was. I had to play it safe, so I elected to refrain from using the car.
いえ、実は車ではないんです。バスか何かがあれば、それで行きたいのですが。
バスならありますよ。もうすぐ廃線になっちまうそうですがね。そんでいらっしゃい。沖宮の駅から出ますよ。
ありがとうございます。探してみることにします。
ほんと、いつ来ます？南沢さん初めて？初めての土地じゃ、いろいろとご不安でしょう。教えてくれりゃ、誰か行かせていろいろご案内させますよ。
That could be kind of good, actually. Like, as long as it doesn't take too long, but it is still like they'll be watching him kind of thing.
そんな、そこまでしていただくのは申し訳ないです。
気にせんでください。これも村の自然さ守るための PR なんですから。
Judging by what I saw at the checkpoints, villagers were at the very least wary of outsiders. That's why, in order to move in and out of the village freely, they had to travel with somebody like Oishi or side with the damn protests. Having an interest in the natural environment surrounding the village tied to the peaceful type of the PR the village was using. I was a bit against having a watchdog attached to me, but that might actually work out in my favor. The entire village is fired up about the damn protests, so I might be lucky enough to hear some especially candid opinions from the residents. Given that, there's no real reason for me to refuse their offer. Yeah.
本当によろしいのでしょうか。でしたら本当に助かります。
After that, I was shown the bus schedule, directed to which bus I should get on. Somebody would come meet me at the bus stop at the village. After showing me around a spot I'd taken an interest in, they would no doubt bring me somewhere like an anti-dam information center. Then, over a cup of tea, they'd try to indoctrinate me into accepting their principles and beliefs. Well, if that was their aim, there'd be a lot of freebies involved. The world is about to give and take, after all. I couldn't be going in a suit. I pulled some plain clothes out of my travel case, changed into something more casual. After calming down by watching some local television, I left the hotel and set off for the Okinomiya station. The bus route I was told would soon be discontinued certainly didn't look that way. There were more than enough trips on the schedule, and the number of passengers was by no means sparse. That was the main link to Okinomiya, the only town in the area. The types of passengers who stood out were older folk who didn't look like they could drive and housewives who didn't seem like they had a license. If the area was submerged at the bottom of the lake, it wouldn't matter if there was a bus route. That's why it was going to be discontinued, in the natural scheme of things. I could catch a glimpse of the government's intent in cutting off the means of transportation to bully villagers into emptying out sooner. That's sad, isn't it? Makes sense. According to the documents, talks between the Ministry of Construction and the locals broke down quite early. The government decided from the start to take an aggressive stance on the matter. It was likely a fairy tale that the north wind and the sun were trying to get the traveler to remove his cloak. Even their bullying had a meaning to it. The reason why the Ogatafuchi Guardians resisted so violently was because the government was doing unseemly things like that. I was somebody who lived in Tokyo, so for a village or two out in the boonies like this to be submerged didn't seem like a big deal. But I guess for somebody actually living here, it would be vitally huge problem. Yeah, that's the thing too. Like, I remember growing up, we had our own versions of this, because I grew up out in the western United States, especially Northwest. There's a lot less population density there, and there's a lot more wilderness. And there was a whole thing where cattle ranchers were protesting because there was a law passed in Washington, I think in the 1970s or 80s, because there had been a lot of timber wolves, like these like kind of really big wolves, and they were problematic because as they got hungry, especially in the winter months, they would, hunt whatever food they could find. But there were cattle ranchers that were setting up shop out in the mountains up there, and so a lot of times these wolves would come out and kill their cattle, and the farmers were very upset about it. And the problem is that there weren't even that many wolves to begin with, because a lot of them had been driven out by natural like over time by just human presence and kind of pushing out and killing them to stop them killing cattle and other things. But environmentalists were saying, hey, like, we need to try and get the balance in order again. We need to try and get things back. So they petitioned this idea to reintroduce timber wolves from Canada back into these national parks around these areas and to protect them, to make it illegal to shoot them because they were like an endangered or a at-risk species. And I remember, I had teachers who were talking about this, and they said that was one of the big problems, was the fact that a lot of the people who were making these decisions lived in Washington on the East Coast. And to them, they didn't really know what it was like living next to dangerous wildlife like wolves. Like, granted, the wolves very rarely or haven't ever really attacked a person, unless they were pushed to the brink of starvation or were ill, like with rabies or something. But that doesn't mean that they're not dangerous to the livelihoods of the people who live there. And so for people who live out in these big cities out on the East Coast who have never had to deal with living with these natural predators in their backyard, but like the idea of making sure that nature was preserved, we're just passing these rules, making it so that these wolves would be reintroduced into these areas and they'd be protected. So farmers basically would just have to grin and bear it whenever they killed some of their livestock. And that discrepancy coming from living in a location that's far away and far removed from where that is, and yet making decisions to it. I remember they would say that the chant at the time was it was a similar to the taxation without representation, which was kind of the final push point that led for the American Revolution. This idea that people in Britain were passing laws and exacting like harsh taxes on people living in the colonies when the colonies had no representation in Parliament to even argue their case. And that idea of like having these massive decisions that have a massive impact on your life and livelihood and your ability to live and flourish being made by people who are so far removed that they can't make objective decisions, or at least ones that like take into consideration your interests, is a very problematic thing. And that's what we're seeing with Hinamizawa here as well, is this like the idea of building the dam is something that makes sense on a national level. It makes sense from a Tokyo standpoint. But on the local side of things, it's really rough to basically be told, hey, by the way, this town that you live in, that you cherish and love, and that your family's lived in for generations, you literally have to move. And there's only so much, we're gonna compensate you for. At least they compensate them, though. There's other countries that'll just tell people to move or die, So that's something. But still, I get it. I really do. Like, if it weren't for Hinamizawa being a cesspool of cuckoo crazy people, I would be a lot more sympathetic for them. This route will be discontinued at the end of the financial year. Thank you for your patronage up until this point. We look forward to your continued patronage on the other lines. Okonomiya Transportation. Gazing lazily at the notice of discontinued service posted inside the bus, I counted down the number of stops until the designated one. Along the way, we passed through a checkpoint before without stopping. They knew what time the bus was coming, so they'd opened up the barricade ahead of time. From here on out, it was enemy territory. My palms at some point became coated with a thin film of sweat.
浮田水道前へ、浮田水道前へ。お降りの方はいらっしゃいませんか?
I hurriedly pressed the stop request button and the designated stop was announced. I also liked a lot of buses I've gone on, they have like a little rope you can pull where you, like, it signals the driver that you want to stop at the next stop. But none of the numerous passengers to be getting off here meant that it had been quite a remote place. In actuality, the stop I got off at was so abnormally run down that I could tell it was barely used. As soon as I stepped out, the intense atmosphere completely different from the interior of the bus assailed my body. Right now, Oishi or Hondaya weren't beside me. That's right, at present, I was alone in the middle of enemy territory. My adversaries probably thought I was just an ordinary tourist, but that was nothing more than a ruse. But if by some mistake my true identity was to be exposed, I brought back the terrifying words I'd heard at the prefectural office that if somebody were attacked in Hinamizawa with a knife, there wouldn't be any evidence left behind. I didn't seem suspicious, did I? My clothing was current and casual. I was exactly the type of clothing that a city slicker that viewed the countryside as a wholesome getaway would wear. A camera and a knapsack. Inside were various things needed for hiking. It was still only June, maybe it was unusual, but the sun was shining down like it was already in the middle of summer. The fact that I didn't bring my hat must seem odd. No, it wasn't something that would be concerned about. It's alright, I was just a normal tourist. Just normal. Was there anything suspicious about me? Asking that as I turned around to look at the bus that was departing. Oh no. All the passengers in the window were staring down at me silently. That's terrifying, because that's implying that the curse is going on right now, which, again, I apparently don't have a good grasp of. That just, sheesh, that image right here is just, it's so much. They were staring right at me, as if they'd seen right through my proud little outfit, just staring, looking down on me. Countless stares rained down like needles on me from the windows open to the air out the bus. All that rained down were stares. None of them were saying a word. But all the more, their silent stares told me that more than a million words could. Hurry up and go back to Tokyo. You outsider.
私は
There's no reason for me to speak. Let's see, let's actually, yeah, that could be a thumbnail, because we're not getting a lot of good thumbnail options in the game because this one tends to be just stills the background, because like a lot of characters so far haven't had any icons, so this could be the thumbnail for here today. My quiet voice is drowned out by the sound of the engine. The bus, as if to torment me, set out slowly, and after doing more than enough to intimidate me, sped off. A thin film of sweat began to rise from my entire body. According to the documents, it was a village that seemed wary of outsiders. Its population was small as well. If they saw an unfamiliar face, they would be quick to identify that face as an outsider. On top of that, nobody else had gotten off at this stop. It was a bus stop that normally just passed on by. Somebody actually getting off there? No doubt they had drawn some attention. But this wasn't a slip-up. They were the ones who directed me to get off at this stop. They were nothing to worry about. I knew I was just nervous, seeing this was my first undercover assignment. I don't know, bro. Like, I'd be nervous right now. More seasoned colleagues referred to us as the new generation that didn't know how to lose their cool, but that wasn't true at all. In order to calm my breathing down, I exhaled the unpleasant air residing in the pit of my stomach. Couldn't help but pray that my apprehension would soon disappear like the white clouds of exhaust expelled from the bus. There was a small shed there to serve as a shelter if it rained, and it was there I decided to wait. Inside the shed, one of the walls plastered with the posters advertised the dam opposition efforts. It was like the heartfelt screams of the villagers were recorded on that wall. Inside that shelter, I felt an inexplicable pressure. It wasn't like I had any real relation to the damn project, but still made me feel hesitant about being inside there. Dang, dude, he's just feeling feelings, man. That's like his whole thing here. He said like 5 words today, but we had that conversation on the phone, but we got that. That's just how it filled with the force of denial that space was. And inside the uneasy space was a girl. Oh, is this gonna be Who's this gonna be? Oh my gosh, it is Rika. Aww. Why are you here? Is she gonna be our tour guide? And she looks so tiny, she's so small. Inside that shed covered the words written in broad brushstrokes, berating the policies regarding the dam and calling for action. There was a girl sitting there, and a drowsy gaze that was half asleep. The two images clashed so much I could only stand there dumbfoundedly for a moment, trapped in such a surreal environment. If I stepped inside, who knew what kind of oafish noise I would accidentally make? I couldn't be disturbing this girl's slumber like that. Having thought this, I gave up entering the shed. It was just a sleeping kid, so why was I worked up about it? Finally, I realized. This girl, to us as a married couple, was the very image of our ideal child. Even after numerous examinations at the hospital, we didn't know for sure what our child's gender was. Whether we could tell if it was a boy or girl was, in the end, dependent on whether or not we could get an image of their genitalia. What a word to have to read aloud. There was, of course, no guarantee it was a girl, but with things the way they were, the possibility was high. Even so, Yuki had been saying the chances that it was a boy or girl were even. But in my heart, I'd already decided that our coming child was a girl. Since the day I decided until now, it was so fun imagining how our child would grow up and that I couldn't help myself. Amongst those numerous imagined forms, the one I thought that would be most ideal had materialized right in front of me. Of course, a little of it was due to circumstance. In my ideal image, her hair would be on the short side. The girl in front of me, though, had long hair. It was almost as if somebody had taken my ideal and made some small adjustments. It certainly wasn't something unpleasant. Even so, I felt like I was sullying her just by looking at her like that. She had an immaculate, no, a divine air about her. Oh. That's supposed to be a yawn? Because that looks like you're screaming. Aww. The girl with an angelic smile with a yawn wide enough that you could see her molars woke up all of a sudden. What are you doing here? I didn't mean to peep. The locking eyes with the girl who had just woken up like this somehow made me feel like I was playing a prank on her. I wasn't doing anything shady, but I became flustered. The girl spoke. No, cried out.
Me.
Aww. Yeah, that's our Rika for us. Meep? Like that character on the show with the puppets? With the orange hair? I thought it was just one of those greetings kids do. So, let's see. That's a very specific reference. Show of the puppets with the orange hair. Who is that, I wonder? I'm guessing it's a very common, like, kind of like a TV show, kind of like we have here in the United States, like Sesame Street. You know, like Elmo is a character that most people would recognize, even if they don't, you know, watch that show very much as a kid. So in order to prove it wasn't a suspicious person, I responded in kind.
Me.
Aw.
Me.
Me.
The girl stared at me dubiously with a doll-like expression. Cute but cold and hard to read. Well, I shouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised. There was, after all, an unfamiliar man right in front of her when she woke up who responded with me whenever she said the same. Suspicious. She definitely thought I was suspicious.
Me.
Hey.
Me?
Akasaka, I understand you are struggling here. You know, she's human, right? Like, I mean, I get that this is a kind of comedic moment, but you've even admitted to yourself that it's weird that you're meeping back at her. Why are you still doing it? Yeah. We were both at a loss for words. No, the only one lost was me. The girl in front of me, as if inquiring about my motive, stared at me intently. In the silence, I felt like I was the one who had to say something first. Dang it, this girl's way better at interrogating somebody than Oishi.
怪しいものじゃないんだ。私は。
みぱー。
Yep, that's her again.
ニパ
みぱー。
What could I have only described as a cold expression suddenly blossomed into a smile, one that soon infected me. You might be familiar with the term angelic smile. To me, it was like that phrase was created just to describe the smile she gave me. The girl smiling while saying nipa probably wanted me to return the favor in kind. What is this? What is happening? That's right, this is a kid's form of communication. Having the other person emulate what you just did was a rudimentary form of mutual understanding.
ニパー。
I gotta admit, that's very realistic delivery.
ニパ
It was a beautiful afternoon in the early summer. What was I doing?
ニパ
ニパー。
Well, whatever. This was interesting in its own way. If making somebody happy just a smile was the work of angels, then this girl was definitely one of them. I couldn't help but pray that my own child, who would soon be born, would grow up to be like this girl. This strangely gentle moment was finally brought to the end by the arrival of a car. An older person waved at me from the driver's seat, a dry smile plastered on their face.
どうも、こんにちは。遅れて申し訳ないことです。昨日お電話くださった観光の方ですかね。
あ、はい。
お待たせして申し訳ねえ。いや、野良でちょいと遅れましてね。すったらと、お乗りくださいな。天気もまんた崩れそうだから、ちゃけちゃけご案内しますよ。
天気
Yeah, I thought the weather was looking really good.
ああ、ここいらは崩れると早いよ。今日も夕立になるかもな。そうなったら、ほんと写真さ撮るところじゃなくなるでしょ。ほら、乗って乗って。
Alright.
ミ
Turning around, the girl was standing right behind me with an intrigued expression. Her body language somehow reminded me of a stray cat that followed you around after you played. Was so charming. Alright, so here's the thing too. I understand, like, they tend to be a lot more, I don't know. I guess Japan has a history of being a lot more, like, kids kind of wander around a lot more than I experienced growing up or would expect nowadays. It has downsides, of course, but like they even have a whole show, right? Like a TV show. It's on Netflix. I wish I could remember its title, but like the whole idea is they have a film crew where they like secretly film kids who go on their first like solo errand, where like basically their parents tell them, go to the store, here's some money, go to the store, buy some stuff and come back. It's like an honorary tradition, but like they're sending like 4-year-old, 5-year-old kids to go walk down the street to the store and back. Granted, not too far from most of those, but it's like it's cute, it's very fun, but like it's also like horrifying. Be like, how are you just letting your kid just wander away like that? So, but I'm guessing it's very much more possible. So like, is Rika just kind of doing that? Like, because she can't be that old, right? Like, how long was it from the dam project to now? Wasn't it like a 10-year thing? And so wouldn't that make her around like 5 or 6 right now, maybe? Or even 4?
あれ、リカちゃまじゃねえですか。
Rika Chama.
ありがたや、ありがたや。
ニパ
A girl named Rika with an immaculate smile and an old man praising her while rubbing prayer beads in his hands. It was a rather mysterious sight to behold. So the girl turns her face at me, tilting her head a little in a cutesy manner. After seeing that, the elder introduced me as a tourist who came to sightsee Hinamizawa.
村を観光したい若者なのです。
A girl, Rika-chan, said that with a smile as she clung onto my arm.
まあね、この村の自然がとても貴重だと聞いたんで、ぜひカメラに収めたいと思ったんだよ。私はこう見えても、とっても写真撮影が好きでね。
富竹2号なのです。
Wait, what the fetch are you saying? Tomitake Mark II? How would you possibly know that? What the fetch was that?
富竹？
牧野、
Makino?
僕も一緒に行ってはいけませんですか？
そんな、レカちゃまが来ても面白いことなんかなんもないですよ。レカちゃまは境内でマリア遊びでもしててくださいな。
Uh-oh. A distinctly displeased expression creeped across Rika-chan's face. Being able to show one's emotions honestly on their faces was a privilege young children have.
もしお差し支えなければ、この子も連れて行ってあげてください。
When I said these helpful words, another smile spread across Rika-chan's face with another nipa. She clung to me again. Not bad at all. Alright, calm down, dude. I want this girl to call me Papa. I've calmed down? No. Father. Oh, Dad. Daddy. Oh, God. Ugh. You stop it right now. This is super creepy. What am I doing? I agree. Ever since I met the girl, I was completely off my game. I just calmed down.
すっかてなかんと。レイカちゃまはダメだ言うても聞かんしな。知ったらんと、己くだせ。ささ、レイカちゃまも。
The old man, who descended from the driver's seat, opened up the side door of the van, which had Onagafuchi Alliance Town Council stenciled on the side. Rika-chan brushed me aside and dove onto the seat and began bouncing around right away. It seemed like she was thoroughly enjoying the bouncy springs.
かんれ、レイカちゃま。そんじゃお客人が座れねえですよ。だな、こら、レイカちゃま。
Girls are nice. I wonder if my child will play around like this too. No. It was written that the guide was raising a child that you shouldn't dote on them. Kids are kids if you don't raise them strictly without spoiling them.
ふかふかでバインバインでニパー。
ニパ
I am definitely going to be a terrible father. You know what? Fair, but you at least love your kid. That'll be what matters. It was decided I would be a doting parent before my child was even born.
そんじゃお客さん、風景の綺麗そうなとこで適当にご案内しますよ。お昼は食べましたかいね？
ええ、ホテルで軽食を。
そんですか。では参りましょうかね。
ひなみざわ観光に出発なのですよ。わーいなのです。
君はリカちゃんでいいのかい？
そうなのですよ。フルでリカと言いますです。
Yeah.
もう繰り上がりの足し算とかもできますですよ。
ああ、それはすごいな。
お指とかは折ってませんですよ。ちゃんと暗算でできますですよ。
Pretty good. Especially if I'm right that you're like 5. The way she insisted that was just too cute. At some point, my nervousness about being alone in enemy territory had evaporated like it was never there at all. I had to at least be a little thankful I met this girl.
じゃあ出発しましょうかいね。Hinamizawa大自然ウォッチング。
The old man stepped on the gas with a great deal of gusto. There we go. Why did you take a picture of her on the bridge? The old man who was apparently named Makino. Well, was he the same Makino that was listed as the auditor of the Onagafuchi Guardians? Showed me around places that were all breathtaking. Even though I wasn't really here for sightseeing, I couldn't help but be impressed. First of all, this is different from the simple scenery of the city. The scenery of a charming village like this, no matter how mundane it may seem to villagers, had a tranquil appeal to it. Oh gosh, all these places. At first I was only releasing the shutter as part of my tourist act, but midway through I found myself taking pictures out of pure interest. Tourist traps had their own unique allure to them, but there's nothing like that here. I actually personally prefer this. Like, I think initially, especially when you're younger, the tourist traps kind of work. They're flashy, they catch your attention, all that, but like, I don't know, after a little while you start to see through the veneer of how fake it kind of feels. There's something much more tangible about just going to a place that has just a natural beauty. Like a place that's lived in, but just also happens to have a lot of cool stuff to look around at. That's part of why national parks have such a great appeal, honestly, and why they need to be protected. Because it's like a little slice of just like, you know, wilderness. It's just slightly cultivated, enough to make it accessible. I was especially captivated by the unspoiled nature of the place. If there wasn't that whole uproar over the dam, I would want to bring Yuki here with me some other time. I wanted her to breathe in the fresh air, as well as show her there's a rejuvenating, verdant scenery.
こんなのが面白いのですか？赤坂は変な人なのです。
いや、こういう円筒状の郵便ポストなんてどことなく漂うノスタルジックな雰囲気は渋いと思わないかな。
ひなみざわは楽しいですか？
まあ、楽しいよ。退院したらぜひ家内を連れてもう一度来たいよ。その時には生まれている子供も一緒にね。
The little you get giving casually away like some actual personal information. Like it's too bad like he's so disarmed because like that could be disastrous.
今は出産を控えて入院しているんだ。予定日がもうすぐでね。君みたいな可愛い女の子だといいんだけど。
お客さんはもうすぐおめでたですかいね。そんないけねえよ。奥さん惚れ出してこんなとこに遊びに来てちゃ。
Gosh darn it, dude. Why'd you tell him that? I was momentarily at a loss for words. It was exactly how Makino said. There was no good reason for a man who was waiting for his wife to give birth to be playing around idly in this place. Did I slip up? Yeah, you did, buddy.
ひなみ沢への旅行は前々からの予定だったんで、妻の家族が付き添ってくれているから大丈夫だし。
そんな年前から予定してたんなら、もしかめ間に合わんとかいね。いや、そんだったらこんな窮屈な思いさせんと。綺麗な観光バスで回れたのに。
Oh, dude, you're slipping bad. It didn't seem as if Makino was actually digging for anything. But if this conversation continued any longer, it would put some unexpected holes in my cover. I altered the conversation by returning to take another picture.
じゃあ、最後の一番景色のいいとこさ案内しましょうかね。
The shrine. It was slightly before evening, and the sun was still burning brightly, but a cool breeze had begun to mix itself into the air. It seemed the exploration of Hinamizawa Rika-chan was about to be done.
一番景色のいいところですか？
そんなリカちゃま、境内からの景色さを置いて他にありませんやね。
Hearing that, Rika-chan smiled even more.
では、赤坂を僕のお家へご招待なのです。
リカちゃんのお家って？
神社ですよ。古出神社。高台にありましてね。景色さ見られるんですよ。
古出神社。
The girl who called Furude Shrine her home, Rika. If I remember correctly, her full name was Rika Furude. And Furude was, that's right, one of the three families. Even if the Sonozaki family is said to hold all the actual power, it was still one of the old houses that held some authority. No, more importantly than that right now was Furude Shrine. If I remember correctly, Oishi had told me, within the grounds of the Furude Shrine there was an office of the Nobugafuchi Guardians. And since the land around the Furude Shrine was private property, the police couldn't step foot there heedlessly. Furude Shrine where even Oishi couldn't simply step foot into. The main base of the operation of the Onogafuchi Guardians. I had been given an unexpected opportunity to enter there. Dude, though, like, here's the thing. He's right, but if he actually sees any evidence there, and they accumulate that evidence later, it would likely be something they could contest in court and make it inadmissible, because he'd be getting in there basically as an undercover with no warrant, gathering information. And if he used that to gather information that then led to a warrant, and it was discovered that he was an officer and who was interested in that stuff at the time, it would be seen as a breach of at least in the United States, it'd be constitutional protected rights. And thus, if you could prove that he got access to like any information that would allow them to then get a warrant in a process like this, it would probably mean that the evidence obtained by the said warrant could be inadmissible in court. I couldn't have asked for more.
楽しみです。ぜひお願いします。
じゃあ、酒々参りましょうかね。天気も少し怪しいですからな。
The sky has suddenly become overcast. It wouldn't be odd if it started raining soon. The cicadas, as if trying to finish their daily allotment of chirps before the evening, cried out even more fervently. Here we go. Shrine time. I got a little more time. I can play a little more, I think, unless this is the end of the chapter. Which would be odd if it was. The van stopped at the shrine's parking lot. Also parked there were numerous other vans with loudspeakers mounted on top of them to act as makeshift propaganda vehicles. On the side of each vehicle was scrawled, "The dam project must be demolished. Defend our homeland to the last. No Oishi-sama's anger." Or the slogan of similar kind. They gave the feeling that even without using the loudspeakers, there's enough to overwhelm any onlookers. Vertical banners were erected in various places. The contents of these banners were similar. They were all objections against the dam or crude insults toward the government. There were horizontal banners, placards, or so on and so forth. They proclaimed that without a doubt this was the headquarters of the Onagafuchi Guardians. For Rika-chan, however, this hectic place is also her home.
着きましたのですよ。
Alright, dude. If you're gonna act like a tourist, you better ask about these banners. Be like, huh. You could even imply saying like, I think I'd been hearing that there was something going on here, and I saw a few signs beforehand, but I didn't really know much about it. Let them talk to you about it, hear their side of the story.
ただいまなのです。
Rika-chan crawled over my lap and exited the vehicle first. Makino had noticed that I was looking at protest banners.
前座はダム反対運動の事務所も兼ねてましてね。こんな風景もあんたらには反安保闘争みてえで懐かしいでしょ。
Student movements against the government policies, movements that bordered on terrorist activity, were one-time commonplace, if only in order to garner global attention. Students holding out in lecture halls, brawling with the riot squads they charged in. It was an age where wasting one's youth like that was widely considered a road to glory. It was slightly before my time.
私は別に活動家ではありませんので、普通に学び、普通に卒業しました。国の政策に、あのような暴力や立てこもりで対抗しようというのには。
はあ、あんた、それはそれで立派な意見さお持ちだね。
政策に意見したかったら、同じ意見の政治家に投票するか、自ら政治の世界に飛び込み、正当な手続きを持って意見を主張するべきであると思っています。
It's that second line that actually bounces around in my head. It feels like the game's rigged against people, obviously, but at the same time, I do feel like there is a more... like, it's not enough just to vote. I feel like more people who are not, like, these polar options need to actually step up and start getting involved in politics yourself.
それが、民主政治の原点です。それに、暴力で挑戦するなど、あってはならないと思います。
I saw that feeling of respect reflected in Makino's gaze. At that moment, something tugged at my sleeve.
赤坂が何を言っているのか、全然わからないのですよ。
Rika-chan, feeling like she was the only one who didn't understand the conversation, had a look of displeasure on her face. That expression was so charming, I had to keep myself from grinning like an idiot. It's often said that the father wants to spoil his daughter rotten. I think I understood the feeling very well.
ごめんね。リカちゃんには難しい話だったね。日本は平和の国だから、自分の言いたいことは平和的に訴えなきゃいけない。暴力で訴えてはいけない。ということさ。
No matter how much I explained, a girl who was just boasting about being able to carry digits over while adding things properly wouldn't understand. It probably wasn't something to talk about in front of Rika-chan anyway.
では赤坂、
Oh?
僕たちの村はどうやったらダムに沈まなくなるのですか？
Such an advanced way of thinking. Even if I regretted my careless words, it was too late now. Here I was at the main headquarters of an organization telling them their way of doing things was illegal. Preaching that violence was not the answer. A complicated feeling had mixed itself in with the respect in Makino's gaze. It was then I finally realized it wasn't that simple. There wasn't a soul who would argue that what I was saying wasn't correct. Using violence to get one's way was something that everyone knew you shouldn't be proud of. However, right now, Hinamizawa was in a predicament that couldn't be overcome with peaceful means alone. The legality of the Hinamizawa Dam project, though the efforts of the various propaganda campaigns erected by the Onagafuchi Guardians, was being called into question. If they further strengthened that campaign, they might be able to suspend or change the construction plan. But that was the most just a possibility. If the government proceeded with the construction as planned, it wouldn't be long before this place was at the bottom of a lake. And he's got a point there. It's also like, there's always that tipping point where it's like, of course, if you have the means to do like things peacefully, right? Like openly and happily, like you should. And we have a lot of protections built into the government in the United States that are supposed to keep that from, like keep that as a viable option. But you always gotta wonder, because some of the most important decisions and important actions in the histories of most nations, including my own, were when people decided enough was enough, and they actually took to the streets and into arms, and did so violently. But a lot of times, some of the most important changes in history have been done by violence. In fact, some of the worst changes and best changes. So, how do you determine at what point it is like you need to take a more dramatic step up? Because frankly, the people who are in power are never going to like it when you step up that much. Even if they are in the wrong and their grasp on power is being too tightly controlled to allow for actual democratic processes to work out. It's a tough question. It's not as simple as just, right or wrong, violence or peace. If it wasn't for the unrestrained resistance of the residents of Hinamizawa, this place might already be underwater.
僕たちはここでしか生きていけないのです。都会では生きていけないのです。
The words of this remarkably young girl were all too accurate, carrying with them the screams of the hearts and minds of the residents of Hinamizawa. Of course, there's nothing I could say to respond to that. I could only respond to Makino and Rika-chan's heavy words of silence.
すみません。よそ者が気安く言えるような問題ではなかったですね。謝罪します。
Makino, unsure of how to reply for a while, could only laugh pointlessly.
お客人たちのようなよそに住んでる方々には関係ねえことです。ひなみざわさ気に入ってくださったんなら、お客人のお友達みんなにも、ひなみざわさ素晴らしいところだって宣伝してください。そういうのが何十年、何百年と広がっていけば、この村さダム底に沈めるなんて、ふざけた計画も、やがてはついえるんですかね。
He followed that with a smile that said, "Please don't think much of it." Makino letting me not worry that much really was a stroke of good fortune. Becoming infatuated with the idea of making friends with the little girl had made me completely forget my apprehension of being in enemy territory. Being reminded of this right before I was going to set foot in their headquarters might have been a good thing. If we'd had this exchange in the middle of their office, if there was a short-tempered youth there, they might have come at me. Thinking of how extreme they were, the worst case, my life could have been in danger. It seemed that I looked quite despondent at that moment. Makino, thinking that he'd said something wrong, became flustered, trying to think of a way to improve my mood.
本当に、軽率なことを言いました。本当に、すみませんでした。
そんなにお気にされないでください。
今日案内してもらった村のあちこちは、どこもとても美しく、素晴らしい場所ばかりでした。もう一度来たいと、心底思わされました。
And it's funny because there's an actual village, of course, that they based a lot of the artwork for this place that actually exists in Japan. And it does look fantastic and beautiful. And seeing pictures of it does make me want to visit it and would make me interested in protecting it.
そんな美しい村が、ダムの湖底に沈むことになれば、必死の戦いになるのもわかります。
I had somehow managed to use my despondent look to change the topic in my favor. After a bit, Makino had returned to his usual high spirits and seemed he believed completely sympathized with his point of view.
そうそう。そんな話はこれくらいにしましょう。本当にとても景色さいいところがあるんです。
行きましょうですよ、赤坂。
Rika-chan, seemingly happy to be free of all the boring, gloomy adult talk, bounded up the stone steps. There was no real need to run, but in order to catch up with her, I also darted up the steps. There were several tents belonging to the town council erected at the shrine grounds. Inside the tents were several folding tables and chairs. A number of older town council members were livening things up with chit-chat. They weren't saying anything incendiary, like the dam project must be destroyed. It was some relaxed, idle chit-chat between local geezers. The normal sort of calming scenery. At the entrance of the shrine looked like a meeting place. It was a large sign erected with Onagafuchi Guardian headquarters written in bold brushstrokes. That was their base of operations. To be honest, it was a bit of a letdown. If you asked what I'd been imagining, this was a bit embarrassing, but I'd thought it would be something more dramatic. With barbed wire fences and barricades. No, that is the home of the, why can't I think of their name? Mion's family, the Sotozakis. Why did it take so long? Holy crap. My first impression of the place, though, was completely different from that. It would look like a simple backwater town hall. It didn't look anything like anything other than exactly that. The old folks who were chanting had noticed Rika-chan's presence.
リカちゃまじゃないの。もう子供はお家に帰る時間だよ。
ここは僕のお家なのですよ。
The other folks guffawed since she wasn't wrong. From that exchange, I could tell that Rika Furude girl was loved by everybody.
牧野さん、その人？
Who are freaking you? You have a sprite. You're one of the first sprites we've seen. And the first new one for sure.
電話をくれた観光の人は？そんですよ。こちら村長さんに、HinamizawaのKimeyoshi村長さん。
So you're the mayor, huh? Finally get to see you. He smiled brightly, but there was no mistaking he would be scary if he got angry. By the look of things, the old man was the president of Onagafuchi Guardians, none other than Kichiro Kimeyoshi himself.
ようこそHinamizawaへ。いかがでしたか？静かでゆっくりしたところでしょう。
ええ、今日一日、美しい場所をいくつも堪能させていただきました。貴重な機会をお与えくださったことを感謝します。
へえ、今時の若い方なのに、また真摯な方だね。
喜一郎、赤坂に見晴らしのいいところを案内したいのですよ。
Thinking that the formalities between myself and the mayor had gone on for too long, Riki-chan butted into the conversation. For her to call the mayor by his first name, I felt like it was a little strange, but none of the villagers seemed to mind. A girl from the Furude household in one of the three families. She was probably different than the average villager.
赤坂、こっちなのですよ。
Riki-chan tugged on my sleeve. Not resisting, I allowed myself to be pulled over. And waiting for me was a magnificent view.
これは。
There it is.
すごい。
And it's also clear from the pictures that some of you have shared in our Discord that this shot here is based on a real place you can go to, like a place you can actually stand and take a picture of the valley that looks just like this. It is incredible. It was an observation deck that looked down on the village. They, knowing that this was the best view of the entire village, kept quiet as I stood there awestruck. I was holding a camera, but I completely forgotten to even glance through the viewfinder. The view, no matter what kind of film it was printed on, wouldn't be able to show everything. If there was a way to explain it, it would only be that it would be able to put it. It would only be what I would be able to put into words. This reminds me of a total eclipse. Like, you can look online and you can see fantastic pictures of a total eclipse. People have good proper cameras. People have good telescopes or whatever who were able to take shots of it. But I witnessed a total eclipse in the path of totality, the one that happened in 2016, because it went straight through my hometown. And so we were outside. The weather was perfectly clear. It was a beautiful sunny day, no clouds at all. And we got to witness that. And I will say from the bottom of my heart and soul, it was one of the most amazing things I've ever seen, and I've never to this day seen any picture that even gets close to just how incredible it looks to see a total eclipse. I think a lot of life is like that, where it's great to take pictures for the sake of memory, but even the best high fidelity, like HD pictures you can take, just don't even come close to the beauty. The only thing I can think of that can surpass beauty that our eyes can see are like the long exposure shots of stars and the sky, because it lets all the light come through better. It lets you see all the stars that are there that your eyes might not be able to show you, or at least are too faint to really notice very well. It was just such a breathtakingly spectacular view, I struggled to find a comparison. For a while, I was left awestruck. I could only stand there and wonder. A cool breeze helped abate the heat rushing through my body. That comfortable sensation alone left me speechless. Rika-chan, who had been holding onto my sleeve the entire time, spoke.
僕の一番のお気に入りの場所なのですよ。
As she said that, she showed me another adorable smile. The smile seemed very fleeting. If you asked why, it was because the view from her favorite spot would eventually be submerged under the deep green waters of a dam reservoir.
こんな村が湖底に沈むことになってるなんて信じられないよ。
I said it quietly so only Rika-chan could hear it. I regretted it as soon as I did, for those words were all too cruel. However, Rika-chan didn't let them cast a cloud on her expression. In fact, she replied with a smile.
沈みませんよ。ダム計画なんて必ずなくなっちゃいますのです。
It was just like a little girl to say something like that. There was no bias in her saying so. It was just her wish.
赤坂は、この村が沈んでしまうと思っていますか？
沈んでほしくなんか。
I knew how important the dam was. I knew it was necessary. It just didn't want to recognize the sacrifices that would be made. I agreed with the project in general, but couldn't agree with some of the details. But if it meant that this girl's beloved scenery wouldn't be taken away from her, I might be able to object to the dam. I might be able to ignore the interest in the nation, development of Japan, all for the sake of one girl's smile. I'm not really much of a humanist, but how sentimental of me.
沈みませんよ。ダムの計画はもうすぐなくなりますですから。
Her words weren't just hopes and dreams, but were seasoned with a hint of resolve. As if she were talking about an unchangeable, predetermined outcome. As sure as the sun rising in the east.
もうすぐ、なくなる？
Wanting to ask her why she believed that, I turned around.
はい、なくなりますのですよ。
どうして、そう言い切れるんだい？
それはなのです。
Yeah? She seemed to want to answer, but as though unable to find the right words, she swallowed back what she was about to say.
赤坂が何をしてもしなくても、ダム計画は今年で終わりになってしまうのです。
She said that so definitely, that the idea of like, regardless of what you do, like as if implying that he would somehow facilitate like allowing the dam to succeed.
もう決まっていることなのですよ。
That was a lie. Something like that had already been decided that Onagafuchi Guardians would have no reason to continue existing. From my point of view, it was like they were doing nothing more than throwing themselves into an endless battle. If they knew the dam project was cancelled, it'd feel much more relaxed around here. The village, though, they could hardly be called relaxed. For evidence of that, I just had to remember how charged the atmosphere was at the checkpoint or at the bus stop. The villagers with the misplaced resolve were still fighting. And this girl, even knowing the villagers' grim resolve, had already declared their victory. The villagers throwing themselves into the endless war and this optimistic girl who said they'd already won. That contrast was somehow strange.
どうしてそう思うんだい？何か確信があるなら、私に教えてくれないかい？
Rika-chan stayed silent for a while, seemingly choosing what to say.
だって、
She looked like she was lost on whether she should continue or not. As if she was troubled on whether it was okay for her to say it, the kind of expression.
決まっていることなのです。他に言いようがないのですよ。
決まっているって、言ったって。
It really is just like a little girl to say something like that. I couldn't believe it was actually true. She was the only one saying such things with such confidence. My real mission I had forgotten about during the fun-filled day resurfaced back at the back of my mind. The kidnapping of the minister's grandson. I don't know why. Did I accidentally hit the space bar there? Oh, I did. That's why. I was leaning against the keyboard. I'm sorry. The kidnapping of the minister's grandson. Had the Onagafuchi Guardians kidnapped the minister's grandson and already succeeded in negotiating the cancellation of the dam project? Did Kimiyoshi actually already know that and was just playing dumb? Was that why the girl was really telling me?
赤坂、
The girl called out my name suddenly.
なんだい？
東京へ帰れ。
Oh, that's weird. Huh? Wasn't only surprised at the sudden command. Ever since I came to this village, I had never once mentioned I was from Tokyo. Well, based on my accent, she might have been able to guess where I was from. What was it getting so worked up over? It was probably the sudden and complete change in her demeanor.
あなたはさっさと東京に帰った方がいい。
Doesn't even sound like her right now. What is happening?
でないとひどく後悔することになる。
It sounds like an adult is speaking to her now. What the fetch? The girl had been holding my sleeve the entire time. She'd been tugging at my sleeve since hurriedly dragging me all over to show me the wonderful view. But this was the adorable Rika-chan who had spent the entire day with. There was no way she could have been replaced by a doppelganger when I wasn't looking. She'd been holding onto my sleeve the entire time, but somehow this girl was someone other than Rika-chan. she looked like Rika-chan, but she wasn't. She was some girl I'd never met before. That girl had told me in an indifferent voice that I would eventually regret coming to this village from the bottom of my heart.
それがあまりにもみすぼらしくて
Holy,
気の毒な姿だから
what the fetch is happening? This is... Okay, we've seen weird before, but this might be one of the weirdest ones because it's not even like wild crazy eyes, right? It's like a different person suddenly. Now they have floated around the idea of doppelgangers before, but that's... what the...
今のうちから警告してあげているのです
どうして私が後悔することになると。
Oh,
いちいちうるさいな
what the fetch is happening? By the way, beautiful shot. She's tiny. Remember, she's a child, but like that way she's talking is... what the fetch? I couldn't believe that I was hearing such cold words coming from Rika-chan's mouth. I just couldn't believe it. Was somebody impersonating her using ventriloquism or something? Thinking that, I wanted to look around, but the girl's gaze had me pinned down, making me unable to move.
あなたの親はあなたが赤信号の横断歩道の真ん中にいるときどうして危ないのかを全部説明し終えるまであなたの手を引っ張らないの
Yeah, she's talking like an adult.
引っ張るでしょまず歩道まで連れ戻してからなぜ危険なのかを解くでしょつまりはそういうこと
The girl I spent time with, Rika Furude, would not speak like that. She would speak like a cuteness befitting her age, with brief childish remarks expressing her emotions honestly. She definitely wouldn't speak with such pointed words.
警告はした勘違いしないでほしいのは私があなたを嫌いだからこういうことを言ってるわけじゃないってこと
It's not like I'm saying this because I hate you. It's like a reverse tsundere.
死んでもいい人に危険なんかを教える必要はないのだし
Okay. So she likes us, and that's why she's warning us.
君は誰だリカちゃんじゃない
Oh. What the fetch is happening? As soon as I accused her of not being Rika-chan, she let out a strange, quiet giggle. It was a laugh not befitting a child of her age. It was like she was possessed by something. Her exchange was that of a total and complete. Okay, hang on. It's making a point of saying she's possessed, which we've usually only seen when it talks to Oishi-sama. But like that's weird, right? Because every time we've seen someone who seems possessed, they had the weird eyes and acted crazy. This is like cold and calculating instead. Was Rika-chan being attacked by some terrifying phenomena? That occult idea came to mind without any sort of hesitation. Rika-chan was acting strange. Somebody help! Thinking that I'd yelled that, I turned around to where the mayor was. I immediately realized he was looking at us with a smile. That's right. To him, it looked like nothing more than me and Rika-chan fooling around. He didn't notice there was something terrifying happening to her.
赤坂の怖がり
What is happening? The girl had obviously grasped that I was afraid. Noticing that and called me a coward, she laughed again. That cackling girl approached me in a strange manner while still laughing, lost her balance, and fell flat on her face. Rika-chan fell down. If it was just a while before, I would have extended a hand to help her up without hesitation. But now, extending a hand to this ominous girl who looked like Rika-chan but wasn't required a bit more courage than I had at the moment.
Me
The girl cried out thus. She then squirmed upright and dusted herself off. Afterwards, she looked around restlessly and a blank expression crept across her face. You've got to be kidding me. Was she making fun of me? No way of acting. It was as though, after being possessed by something, she had lost her memories of what happened.
冗談だろリカちゃん
Me
I don't know if Rika-chan had heard me or not. She just cried out like that, as if questioning herself.
お客人リカちゃまもお茶が入りましたよ
That old woman voice is so old woman voice. It's gotta be fake.
塩大福もあるからにぜひ食ってきんさいな
Like it's like It's like clearly the voice actor is a younger person sounding like an old person. It's great though. It's very charming. An old lady wearing a smock was waving energetically from the entrance of the office. Hearing that there were snacks, Rika-chan's expression changed. A carefree smile. That was a familiar smile, the one that belonged to the embodiment of the ideal daughter. Any hint of the creepy girl that was just there spouting sinister words had vanished. Okay. Rika-chan responded with vigor, running off to the washing station that was along the side of the office. She stopped halfway, though, turning around to call to me. That does sound like a thing a kid says. No matter how you look at it, that was Rika-chan. Those words and the way she said them, no matter how you heard them, they were definitely Rika-chan's. The old lady urged me to wash my hands. Without any resistance, I lined up beside Rika-chan at the wash station. Splish splash. Started at Rika-chan, intent on washing her hands properly, like she had probably learned at school.
Machigaitte?
僕のお手手の洗い方です。金シールを4個しかもらったことないです。僕はお手手を洗うのがきっと下手なのですよ。
間違ってなんかないよ。それだけしっかり洗えてれば十分だよ。
それだけではダメなのですよ、赤坂。ちゃんとたわしを使って爪の間の赤も落とさないと金シールはもらえないのです。
I mean, that's fair, but it's also like, feels excessive.
リカちゃんは真面目で偉いな。
ニパー、赤坂に褒められましたのです。
No matter how you looked at it, it was Rika-chan. There was no trace of that girl from before. Exactly what was that sinister girl?
リカちゃん、さっきのあれはどういう意味だい？さっきリカちゃんは私に東京へ帰れってそう言っただろ。
言いましたのですか？
I was at a loss for words. She didn't remember what the girl just now had said. Like I would ever believe something as occult like that could happen. Like I would ever believe that Rika-chan could be possessed by that strange girl and say those creepy things.
リカちゃんが確かにそう言ったよ。
Her expression told me that, despite my saying so, she had no idea. She wasn't playing dumb, she actually didn't know. Exactly what was that just now? Just as Rika-chan had, I let a look of confusion creep across my face. The two of us both looking like we had no idea what was going on must have certainly been a humorous sight to behold. While partaking of the tea and snacks, I was shown a propaganda film shot by the Guardians that highlighted the resistance efforts. Older folks talked passionately on how long and grueling the fight against the dam was, but fell on deaf ears. I was transfixed by Rika-chan, who had heard these stories countless times before, was nodding off. Eventually, Rika-chan noticed I was staring at her and smiled as she rubbed her eyes. That smile was Rika-chan's, after all. There was no hint of the sinister shadow. After that, my unreasonable fear of Rika-chan lessened with passing of time, but I could no means forget what had happened. What the fetch is this? It eventually grew dark, and the mayor said they had prepared dinner, but I said I would come again tomorrow and took my leave. I had to return to the hotel and file my regular report with the section chief.
そうですか。では、また明日もぜひいらっしゃい。お電話さくれれば、すぐに迎えを出しますんでね。
ご好意感謝します。ぜひ明日も遊びに来ようと思います。
ねえ、さしてあげてくださいな。あんた、リカちゃまに大層気に入られたみたいだしね。
赤坂は明日も来ますですか？明日は5次元で終わりですから、3時くらいに来てくれると嬉しいのですよ。
Please come again. A pure smile urged me to do so. There wasn't a trace of that evil aura. Depending on what happened next, all of my end up does nothing more than All that might end up as nothing more than other than my hallucination. Thinking about it logically. If that daughter of the Furude household, one of the three families, had taken a liking to me, then there was a strong foothold for my investigation from here on out. It was like a free ticket for a reason to visit Hinamizawa. Only I could treat a little incident as a figment of my imagination, and having this girl who was the embodiment of my ideal daughter grow so attached to me wasn't bad either. I had successfully driven into the belly of the Onogafuchi Guardians and had a mayor as well as other important members of the Alliance welcome me with open arms. This was a great turn of events. Not with what we know. However, I still felt uneasy. Getting back to the hotel, I forced down the almost painful cold beer until I could clear my mind. The shock from the incomprehensibly strange incident continued to torment me. Alright, there we go. I think we're going to stop here. If it's the end of the chapter, we'll do the tips. If not, we're just going to end here. Let's see. That was something else. Interesting. Alright, we got tips. Let's do the tips real quick. Okay, click. There we go. Thank you, game. The terrifying shrine girl met with someone's adorable daughter. Alright, let's see what the tips are all about. Going smoothly. Also, I saw that picture up there. Young Mion, I'm excited. The sound of the car grew closer, followed by the sound of it braking as the engine cut out. At that moment, his up until now lackadaisical footsteps grew decisive as the man in the room dashed up the wall beside the window and carefully peered outside. It was his comrade's car. Even so, he didn't relax his guard. Eventually, the sound of footsteps approached the door. Thump. Thump, thump, thump. It was the passcode.
帰ってきたね。開けちょくれな。ああ、お疲れ。今開ける。
After the locks were undone, the door opened, the man appeared, his arms laden with full in plastic grocery bags. The bags in his hand had 7 Smart written on them, bread and milk and cartons able to be glimpsed within. The contents of the bags were then spread out over a sheet on the floor.
カップラーメン買ってきちゃう。お湯沸かせな。小僧はどうしてる？ん？ずっと寝てる。手がかからなくて助かるよ。うんこ垂れるときは騒ぐけどな。漏らさせんな。弁習は万一のとき、やばいって。わかってるよ。猿グツワは定期的にチェックんな。外れてもまずいん。きつくも締め付けちゃあん。窒息させたら意味がなん。
Like, they're talking with these really thick country accents, which we haven't seen so far in like that, like the members of the town we've really been listening to. So I wonder if it's meant to be sowing doubt that maybe these guys are working with a different group. But I feel like it's gotta be the people of Hinamizawa, right?
わかってるって。あれ？携帯コンロのガス管頼まなかった？もうガスねえよ。聞いてねえ。だは。
You idiot.
マジかよ。ついてくれよ。くそ、くそ。
He rattled on the portable stove as he struggled to get it to light. Seeing that, the man who went to buy supplies let out a deep sigh. And with a backwards glance at the sight, began to walk to the corner of the room. The kidnapped boy was sprawled out on a sheet that was spread out on the floor.
小僧、元気かいね。
Of course, the man didn't assume the kid was able to hear the question. That was because the boy's ears were plugged, and his eyes and ears were thoroughly covered by packing tape. Also, his mouth was gagged with a thin, twist-up towel. Because of that, the boy wasn't able to close his mouth properly, his cheeks sticky with his own saliva. Of course, that wasn't the only reason. Both his arms were tied tightly behind his back with a leather belt. My gosh, this poor kid.
今んところ、順調らし。命の心配はない。お前のじいさんがしぶり寄ったん。耳たぶの一つも切り落とさなきゃならんかったんけ。やらんくて済んで助かりよんよ。本家はこうと決めたら、鬼やんね。どんな残酷なこと命令するかも想像つかん。
The main family.
その本家が、小僧に傷一つつけるな言うてんから、とにかく、順調なんだろんな。大臣はダム計画を撤回で水面下工作。南沢ダム計画は無期凍結へ。小僧の解放はいつ頃になるんだろうな。早く一服したいもんだぜ。本家が決着のタイミング、測ってるらしい。いつになるかはあらんが、 近いうちやんな。
よかったな、小僧。もうじき解放されるぞ。
The men didn't know if their voices were heard by the boy. For him, there was nothing they could do but continue to sleep to escape his harsh reality.
それよん、ガスをどうするんね。ラーメン食えんよ。
I mean, you could, but it would be unpleasant.
ガス切れたなら言うてえな、もう。
Alright. One down. Poor kid. Why I like rainy days. The weather forecaster predicted that it wouldn't rain at all this entire week. It's not that I hate sunny days or anything. When every day is the same, unchanging sunny weather, however, anybody would long for a rain cloud or two. If it's simply clear skies for a week, a month, a year, anybody would long for a rain cloud or two. The weather specialist said they had carefully scrutinized a large quantity of past data, so it wouldn't be so unlikely for the forecasts to be wrong. I knew as much. But even then, there were occasionally a day when I was hoping for it would be wrong and stared up at the clear blue sky. Was I being mischievous in hoping so? I waited and waited, feeling almost suffocated by the boring blue sky undisturbed by a single cloud. If you could die from that suffocating feeling, then the population of Earth probably wouldn't have increased to this point. In other words, the only person who was being suffocated by this was me. And so, I welcomed summer evenings where not even the weather forecast could predict a sudden shower. If I were to explain it like this, would you understand a bit more about how I feel? Let's say that tonight's dinner was going to be curry rice. This is Keiichi's home, but I'm guessing it's not Keiichi we're listening to. But when you're called down to the dinner table, what's waiting for you instead was eggplant and bell pepper stir fry. This is just on your brother's whim, by the way. I'd be delighted by such whimsy. But I don't really like eggplants or bell peppers, but still, I'd be delighted. The fact that this is a pre-established routine of curry rice had been broken would be amusing. If tonight was repeated 100 times, and 100 times you had to eat curry rice, yet for just this one night that was changed to an eggplant and bell pepper stir fry, there's no way you couldn't enjoy that chance happening. I hate pre-established routines. I really hate when things are all decided beforehand. I have no love for boredom. I always get my hopes up for that something today would be different from yesterday, no matter how trivial. It's been decided the entire week starting today was going to be clear skies. The weather forecast decided upon it, so the god of weather must also feel obliged to do so. But who's to say the rain cloud might not just show up one day on a whim? It's something that nobody can say for sure, but because of that thought remains in this world, a creature such as myself can't continue living without being suffocated. A creature, huh? Tomorrow will probably be a hot and clear day. However, I'm the only one that knows that predetermined fate. Even with but a slim 1% chance, sometimes changes. Hoping for that 1%, I hung upside down weather charms on my sunlit and Evanstros. I don't know what that word is. I'm guessing it's like some kind of maybe a wraparound deck or something. In the end, I spent my days waiting for those unexpected things in life to happen. I pondered why I was hoping for it. Why was I hoping for a rain cloud? The answer was simple. I've had my fill of clear skies. Then why was I hoping for a rain cloud? The answer was simple. The fact that it was going to be sunny tomorrow was boring. So why was I hoping for a rain cloud? In the end, it doesn't really matter whether it rains or shines tomorrow. Basically, I just want the rain would water my heart, which was withered from boredom. That's why rather than a TV drama where the plot's already been decided, I prefer looking up at the sky. Interesting. Who is that talking? That's an interesting depiction of ideas and the ideas of like not wanting things to be boring. Barley tea and black tea and a millstone. Look at like the expression changes. It's the coach and Mion. But as you hover over, the picture changes. That's kind of funny because most of these elements are just flash white, but like having the actual change is really fascinating.
"だいぶ血圧も良くなってきましたよ。そのお年でこれだけの回復力があるのは、いやいや、感服するばかりです。お嬢さんなら100でも200でも元気にお過ごしになれますね."
The young doctor in his medical coat said that as he undid the blood pressure cuff from his arm and the old woman tucked away in her futon. Oh my gosh, we get to see her too!
わしんたいな死に損ないは早うしなんと若者の邪魔になっていけんね。
By the way, gotta say, it's interesting seeing you for the first time, but holy crap, your ears are huge. The old lady, Oyu, laughed faintly with a broad smile on her face. Then, turning toward the sliding door, she called out in a strong voice.
しみこさんかたえこさんおらんね。入江先生に麦茶でも入れてやれやな。
The sound of rushing footsteps from the hallway drew closer until finally the door slid smoothly open. What revealed was a young girl. It looked like the old lady's granddaughter.
シミコさんは今日はもう上がっちゃったよ。何か用？
Aww, cute baby Beyond. She's so sweet looking. Aww, I love it.
いいよ。入江の先生に麦茶を入れたってんな。
うん、了解。抹茶も飲む？紅茶の方がいい？砂糖もミルクもたっぷり？
わしが加減するから入れんでええんね。砂糖壺とミルクも一緒に持ってきてんな。
はいはい。
Aww. The girl named Mion, after giving a rather uninterested response to her taskmaster of master of a grandmother, returned to the hallway.
先生の麦茶は来客用のガラスジャーに入れるんよ。ちゃんとお座布団もつけてな。水滴もちゃんと拭き取っとくんね。
わーってるってうっさいな。
A tired voice wafted in reply from down the hallway. The apathetic tone of a voice was far from unusual. The old lady let out a wry smile, slip across her face as she chided the girl.
しょうがないやっちゃな。叱られるうちがはなんねえ、なんたく。
お嬢さん、まあ、そこまでは言わなくても、みおんちゃんも若いなりに頑張ってますから。
あれの母親もな、しょうがないやっちゃったんね。よう似とる。
で、その母親の母親もまたそっくりなんじゃないですか？
The old lady burst out laughing. Her expression showed that she hadn't taken the comment the wrong way.
入江先生、申し訳ない。症状開けてもらえんけんね。風が涼しそうだわ。
The cool chirping of the Higurashi had at some point started leaking through the gap in the doorway. Irie stood up and opened the door a bit. A refreshing breeze pushed out the stale air that had built up in the room.
日中はだいぶ暑くなったように思うんですが、まだ朝夕は涼しいですね。夕べは少し肌寒いくらいでした。
That's my favorite. I like it when it's like pleasantly warm during the day, but it gets cool at night.
そんな朝夕もまた、Hinamizawaのいいところな。
Irie replied with a smile as he returned to sitting on the cushion beside the old lady. And thus the two of them, for a little while, soaked up the voices of the Higurashi.
わしゃ100まで生きにせ。もうしばらくは死ねんよ。
Sounds good.
ダムの剣、きっちり蹴りつけるまでは、勘の蓋かって収まらんわ。
国が一度決めたことを撤回するのは、なかなか難しいでしょうね。
You gotta try.
国のやることはな、いつの世も、一周す回すみたいなもんね。そんでも、だいぶ重いやっちゃ。
石臼です。
知らんねか、石臼。
Irie quickly affirmed that of course he knew what the old lady was talking about. For he knew full well Oyo didn't like having her stories interrupted.
国の石臼はな、なんでもゴリゴリ引いちまう。大したもんよ。でもな、簡単には回らない。重い石臼なんねな。たくさんの人間が、せーのってやって、ようやくじりじりと動き出す。そんな石臼なんよ。
I clicked her on her early. Sorry about that. Irie pushed his lips, listening quietly to what she was saying. Eventually, Miana returned with some tea laid out in a tray. Saying that Oreo was talking and in a good mood, she quickly knelt down and laid out the sets for the barley and black tea, careful not to interrupt.
だから、一度回り始めたら、簡単には止められんね。回し始める一番初めが一番重い。それが嫌だから、みんな手を休めんと、ゴリゴリ回し続けるんね。
摩擦係数の話でしょ？
Mm-hmm.
確かにバッチャの話、理屈はあるね。
Again, very clever for how young you probably are.
ちゅうことはだ。何かの間違いで突然イシウスが止まっちまったら、また回すにゃどえらい力がかかる。ちゅうこったな。
確かに、一度中断した計画をもう一度動かすのに必要なエネルギーはかなりのものでしょうね。
It's the opposing forces of friction and momentum. Like friction makes things gradually slow down and like want to arrest their movement. But if you have momentum, you keep it going. But if you lose that momentum and you come to a dead stop, the friction actually becomes its like peak strength. And getting it moving again is the hardest part. That's what she's saying. Like she's pointing out that that's how the dam project's probably going to be too.
簡単には止められんイシウスだけどな。一度止めれば二度とは回らん。そういうイシウスよ。
イシウスを止めるいい手があればいいんですがね。
When Irie responded with that, Mion and the old lady suddenly sunk into silence. Irie, instinctively thinking he'd said something rude, searched in a small panic for the words to correct himself. But that silence wasn't a result of rude words. For what crept across Mion and the old lady's faces was contemptuous smiles. Oh, that's kind of creepy. Oh, that's really creepy. Oh no. The atmosphere surrounding Irie suddenly froze, leaving him flabbergasted. Thinking that scornful smiles creeping across both their faces was the result of some mistake of his, he could only grow afraid. The laugh of fear. It hadn't been that long since he was enveloped by silence. However, unable to stand it, Irie could only let out a weak laugh. Irie's laugh eventually spread to Mion and the old lady. Not knowing exactly what they were laughing at, their laughter left a lingering chill. The only one not laughing were the Higurashi, who continued their simple, unchanging chorus. God, everything else is so creepy. Man, it's like the Higurashi, the Hinamizawa of this branch of the storyline so far is the creepiest I've ever seen, which is saying a lot because it's been creepy. Holy crap, it's creepy. But with like Rika having her weird personality shift where it's almost like a completely different person and almost like a different voice actor was just going at it for that. That was insane. The terrifying possession eyes that we saw with the bus, and now with Mion and Oreo, who grandma, like having their weird synchronized giggles fashion, like holy crap. Ooh, chills. All right, that's where we're going to end things for today. I hope you enjoyed this episode. Very long, but worth it. I appreciate you being here. I enjoyed recording it. I'm very happy to be back on the train and jumping on things as they go. It's looking more and more likely that I will have time and be able to try and do a kind of live stream thing around Christmas time. So I'm not sure which day we'll be doing in particular, but I definitely want to do it. It'll be really fun. It'll be nice to be able to do some stuff. I'm thinking about, for a big part of it, just playing games I enjoy, like maybe something I play on my own, and just kind of chatting while I play the game. See if we want to do that. I definitely want to do some fun stuff that involving the channel, updates, and Patreon. I got some interesting projects I've been working on, and I'd like to showcase some of the work that's been done so far, see if we can get you hyped up about it. Maybe something you'd be willing to support in the future. We'll see. Again, like a lot of the problem is that anything creative I do that isn't like directly to this channel is like a long-term type of thing. So whether or not that'll be doable is the question, or at least the time scale. But I can hope, and not just hope, by actively pursuing my interests and pushing myself and actually doing things, kind of like this channel. You have to start somewhere, and it has to be rough at first, but I feel like I've got something exciting, and I'm hoping that if you guys could be, are excited about it, you can kind of keep me on pace and making sure I'm making time to work on it. But we'll get to all that next time. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope you come back next week for the next episode. Also stick around for the other things we're covering in the week of like stuff. Cast Head's about to be wrapped up, and we'll be doing a community vote on the next game we play for Friday soon. That'll be very cool. I've started recording Baldur's Gate again, so I can keep getting that playthrough, the randomized playthrough, kind of wrapped up eventually, and we can move on to something else maybe. Trails in the Sky, 3rd chapter has been a blast. I'm looking forward to that. And of course, Sunrider is also almost done. And when we're done with that, I've got a good idea of what we're going to be covering next. So there's a lot of exciting stuff on the future. So I hope you'll come back for more. But until this video, watching me, see me next. I'll see you there.